Greetings and good day, everyone. I'm doing a little bit of a shout out video here. If you've been looking at my channel and the recommended channels that I'm posting there, there's someone there named Lewgord, and I would please check out that channel, subscribe, and I want to see if I can't get Lewgord here to maybe respond to some of the issues I raise in this video. The person that is affiliated with that channel is Lewis R. Gordon. I'm not sure how many people here are familiar with Lewis. Lewis is an amazing scholar. He was one of my professors when I was at Purdue. Had an amazing class with him, somewhat intimidating class to be quite honest with you, called Embodiment, Ambiguity, and Anonymity. And we read so much Sartre and Merleau-Ponty, Alfred Schützen there, Derrida. It was just an amazing class. And I'm really excited that he's here on YouTube, and I'm thinking we're going to be able to get some kind of exchange and dialogue going on. And what I wanted to do maybe to set this up is I wanted to talk about two different scholars, and I want to see if I can't get into some more discussion about Sartre's work. But the issue is, to what extent are there opportunities for kinds of relations with others that are positive rather than self being positive and others being a kind of an estrangement. Now, let me clarify that first. Now, one of the early books that was really influential on me when I was in graduate school, especially as I was first starting to get into phenomenology, was just an excellent little book by Drew Leader called The Absent Body. And I'll see if I can post a link to that book. The book itself, again, Drew Leader is a medical doctor and a phenomenologist, and he talks about the way the body naturally disappears. And by that I mean, you don't see your own face, your hands largely disappear while you touch things. There's lots of ways in which a kind of healthy, normal functioning of the body is a routine kind of transparency of the body, and that dysfunction or illness, sickness, when something breaks down, the body becomes explicitly aware of itself. And he'll designate it with a dys-appearance. That is, if I'm, going about my business, my body is somewhat transparent, but if suddenly I have a stomach ache, it's like my body disappears. That is, it suddenly presents itself to conscious awareness and calls for my attention. And as much as I really enjoyed that book, one of my first publications was on Leader, and I've done so much work in his work. I was at a conference and I met Harvey Sarles. Harvey Sarles. And Sarles, I'll see if I can put a link to his book as well. And we had a great discussion, and he agreed that it was a really good book. But he said that he had a lot of problems with it because it was underestimating the value of touch, and how touch itself is neither a disappearance nor a dys-appearance. That touch is a way that we feel ourselves, and it's not alienating, but it's not normally disappearing. And the more that I thought about it, it was quite interesting. I got into Morris Berman's work and started to realize that, yeah, touch and contact forms of, whether you're going to talk about petting your animal or just hugging another person, there do seem to be pretty robust forms of bodily presence that are neither a disappearance, that is a transparency, nor an opacity that shows up through a dysfunction. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. Now, I guess the larger issue, and this is my attempt to try to get Lewis into this conversation. I don't know if he has either the time or inclination to jump in on this, but this was a response, or this was a personal message that I got from Mickey Me 1, and I'm going to post a link to his channel as well. He's been sending me some very interesting messages, has a great channel, but Mick here writes me, he says, on the subject of Sartre, is there an aspect of his work which people seem to be in denial about, even though it is the best bit? He says, I'm talking about the end of his novel Nausea, where he describes a way to find, quote, salvation. I think it's considered too uncool by most existentialists, but by the end of that novel, he really does involve the character finding salvation in a convincing way. I can go into more detail, but maybe you know what I mean. In essence, my question is, has that side of Sartre's philosophy been studied, appreciated at all? And then he goes on and he says, to give you a bit of idea where I'm coming from, as I understand it, at the end of Nausea, the guy decides to move to Paris and then decides to write a novel. But then, just as he is about to leave, feeling like a miserable failure, he realizes that one day, when he has written his novel, he will look back on this moment and know it was the amazing moment when he decided to write this novel. So suddenly, this now becomes amazing. My perspective on this is what I called simultaneous nostalgia, meaning that it is what is so good about nostalgia is that it allows us to see the past as such, even though when we were living it, we didn't because we were caught up in the contingencies. So if we're able to achieve a sort of simultaneous nostalgia about the present, that would allow us to experience its suchness or to actually be in the moment. So it's Zen as well, at least I think so. And I really enjoyed that comment. Okay, I'm not as versed on Sartre's fiction. I haven't really read I mean, I've read maybe No Exit and a little bit of Sartre's fiction, but I've read more of Sartre's Being and Nothingness, and I know that Lewis is, he's easily an expert in this area. So I would love to see what Lewis has to say about that. For my own, 2 cents worth on this, I've tried to do a lot of work on Bakhtin as a kind of corrective to Sartre's Hell is Other People. I mean, from my reading, particularly Being and Nothingness, I mean, Sartre does have a largely negative, I guess, a negative spin on our relations with others, that others do seem to be a kind of alienating presence. They set me amidst the things of the world, and they're a condition of my possibility, right? Those possibilities that flee from me, but they don't really seem to be positive or robust, at least not as they're popularly talked about. Whereas Bakhtin, Bakhtin is very rich in talking about how I bring a transgredience in my encounters with others, my outsidedness to others, and that cloaks them and is the condition for aesthetic appreciation. That is, when others are in a world, they have a direct ethical relation to the objects that they're concerned with. So a person could be trying to craft an object, and the object that they're actually working on, and they're trying to get it to come out in a certain way. And that person, they experience that relation ethically, but someone on the outside of it, looking out at that person in their relation of care, they become a kind of a context for the aesthetic appreciation of it. They give a kind of outsidedness to it. I think this is partly why parenting can be so aesthetically pleasing. It's partly why it can be so fun to watch other people play in sports. We get to enjoy their ethical motivations with a kind of an aesthetic distance that sees them in terms of their strivings. At any rate, I hope that people do check out Lewgord's channel. Lewis is a great guy, and I'm hoping to get him into some of these discussions. From my perspective, this would be a great add to some of the conversations we could have. I don't know if he is going to respond to this. Other people out there, if you do have a take on Sartre, and particularly on his book Nausea, which I'm not that familiar with it. I've looked at it, but I can't give a response to this question. I would like to see what other people think about how Sartre's relations with others and or Sartre's philosophy, does it offer some kind of, quotes, salvation or some more positive resources for people in their life construction and their attempt to have a meaningful existence. So I am going to post some links down to those channels that I've mentioned and some of those books. Okay, hope everyone is well. Thanks.